the ways dating changes as you get into your 30s and how to make them work for you and not against you. That's what's coming up now on Solving Jewish Singleness with the therapist that gets it, Liz Wallenstein. If too much fantasy was the challenge of people dating in their 20s, then the challenge in your 30s is not enough of it. You see, if you've spent your 20s trying and hoping and expecting things to work out and it hasn't worked by the time you get to your 30s, then you may have gotten jaded, hopeless, and pessimistic. And if that's happening, then a lack of motivation becomes your enemy as your vibe and your energy that you put out there on dates and as you're meeting people becomes tired and kind of lackluster, which is a real attraction killer. It's very hard to make a connection from that, just kind of tired, blah place of, what's gonna do it, what's gonna work. What was once enthusiasm and authenticity that you may have had more of in your 20s gets replaced with coping behavior, distraction techniques, and second best thinking. I'm going to go more into that to explain that, but all these things can prevent like deep connections, soulful connections, because you're not putting your best foot forward. You're not being your best authentic self. You're kind of being this compromised version of yourself. This is very serious. So what made this dynamic the most obvious to me was actually the first date that I had with my husband, which was in my late 30s. Now, the date wasn't magic, but I felt on a high after the date and I was looking forward to the next one. So why, if we didn't have this like crazy connection and it wasn't that, everything was perfect? So my husband had just moved to New York from Phoenix, Arizona. He wasn't accustomed to, dating a lot and being part of a whole singles world. And I remember when I went out with him, it kind of took me back to when I first started dating in my 20s. It was just a much different experience. I really felt from him that he was trying to show me a good time and he was really putting thought into what it was like for me. He brought me to a fun restaurant. He made plans to do something afterwards if I wanted to. That was, cute and original. But, in the conversation even, he was authentic. There was just still energy there about, the things that he wanted for himself and the things that were important to him. And I really felt like he was trying to get to know me. Like he was really giving me his attention. So why? What made this experience different? Honestly, that he wasn't burnt out. He wasn't the same jaded and hopeless that I was and so many of my peers in New York were, because we had been dating so much and meeting people so much and trying so hard already to find our person and to get married that we were already burnt out. But he wasn't burned out, which made me realize what an issue that was for people in their 30s who had been trying at this for some time already and just hadn't found success. In general, I had been advised to date out-of-towners, people outside of New York, that people who were not accustomed to a constant single scene and all these different options for dating and meeting people constantly, that they had more of an appreciation for the opportunity to meet you. And so they gave it more of a try. Gave it more of a try within themselves and gave you more attention and really tried to see if something was there because they appreciated the opportunity more. It wasn't like a dime a dozen for them that they were so, overused to it. So how do we avoid burnout? How do we keep up a sense of hope and enthusiasm as the time goes on? So my answer for this has raised some eyebrows before. It's not totally conventional, so you really have to know yourself if this applies to you or not. But at least for people who have been dating a lot and had a lot of exposure to like the single scene and meeting people, I really stand behind it. So I'll offer it to you here, and take what you want, leave what you don't, but here it is. So something that dating singles hear a lot, especially when somebody's trying to convince you to give somebody a try or some kind of event a try, is, what does it hurt to give it a try? Well, here was my answer. A lot. It actually hurts a lot. Every time I give something a try and then it doesn't work out, there's this deep sinking feeling inside. It contributes to hopelessness. It strengthens whatever feelings I already had there from all the other unsuccessful attempts of, it's never going to happen for me. Is there anybody out there? So yes, my answer to what does it hurt to give a try? A lot. It hurts a lot. Another comment you hear a lot when you're single and somebody wants you to give somebody a try, or is convincing you to go to this event or try some website or something, is, you never know. Well, my answer to that is, I almost always knew. My hunch about a person or about an event, that it was going to be for me or not, was pretty dead on most of the time. See, I knew myself and had a wide enough range of experiences to know what works for me and what doesn't. And dare I say, and I know this is risky, but let's say when it comes to online or app dating, or somebody gives you information with a picture, I do think you can tell a lot from a picture. And that's even coming from a woman, I know. But it's not about how attractive the person is or not. It's not about like them being exactly your look or being, drop dead gorgeous or not. It's you get an impression from a picture of if that person is kind of in your orbit or not. Now, singles often get dismissed as picky or commitment phobic if they're discretionary with the suggestions that come to them. Often by matchmakers, or even if you're not formally a matchmaker, but people are trying to set you up. If you say no, or you can't see it, you're just not feeling it, automatically they're right, you're wrong, you get labeled. But I think that people need to understand that unless you've been there yourself, you just can't get it. That dating takes a lot out of a person. It's a lot to hold conversation and give one-on-one attention to somebody for several hours at a time. If you're just not feeling the two of you click, if you're just not feeling some kind of a connection there, like, it's exhausting and draining. And yet another, going nowhere situation or a bad date can be depressing for the single, or it could drive them to that, kind of distraction behavior, to kind of tune out of the hopelessness that comes along with that, and the despair that can come up. And that's what I was saying earlier. You want to avoid that too. You don't want to start compromising yourself and engaging in unhealthy behaviors and habits in order to comfort yourself or protect yourself from the disappointments that come from repeated bad dates and attempts that go nowhere. So people wanting to set up singles and help them out need to get better at trusting adult singles that they do have a sense of what suggestions are worth pursuing for them or not. Shrugging off the responses of the singles that they're trying to set up, not respecting their intuition, and acting as if they, the person trying to set them up, knows better than the single just because they're married, is infantilizing and disrespectful to single people. I talked more about that in episode 1. I have one more classic comment for you. You gotta be in it to win it, or some other form of that statement, meaning, get yourself out there as much as you can. Well, for me, and again, it doesn't mean that this, because these things are true for me, is true for everybody, but the more that I was in it, the more I felt like a loser, not that I was winning it. Going to an event of over 100 people, sometimes it's like 500 people, and no date comes out of it. And that might sound surprising to people, but that's actually pretty common, because a lot of the times people end up just speaking to the people they know and barely meeting new people. But not only that, you hear these events, 500 people, even 100 people, whatever it is. It's not that you're seeing 100 new faces. You're seeing like 2 or 3 new faces and 98, 97 faces that you've seen at 10 other events you've been to before. So going to these things and having all these people around and no date coming out of it, that could do me in for a week. Like, that could seriously bring me down in the past. Because seeing the same faces over and over again, and that feeling that there's nobody left, like this is all there is, there's nobody new to meet, like who could it possibly happen with? The despair of that is overwhelming. And also, let's say for when it comes to the apps and the websites, for women over a certain age, the lack of positive response on those dating apps and websites, while the men are being overwhelmed with options, that could be very worrisome and infuriating. And then one more thing, singles parties, and the distinction I'll make between singles parties and singles events. I'll say singles parties is just getting a lot of people together with no real structure, a way to meet. It's just, socializing and left to kind of meet on your own if that happens, because a lot of times that's considered like not so cool, which is, contradictory to what people really came there for, but I digress. My experience of singles parties was that the people who prefer to stay single were the people that were there, because that was their time to go out and connect with people and talk to people and get attention. And then once they had that, they could go back to their solitary life, because they just needed little drips and drabs of that to keep them going. That the people who were really looking to settle down and find somebody to start something with and commit with, that wasn't the people that was hanging out at these parties. So that whole idea of you gotta be in it to win it, that whole idea of maximum exposure, I personally do not agree that it's productive and helpful all the time. And also that it could actually bring you down and take you farther away from your goal. Again, if those down feelings contribute to second best behavior, coping behavior, distraction techniques, because of all the feelings that it comes up. And you may not even be aware of the feelings that it's bringing up. Like, it just becomes habit to react to it. So where am I going with all of these points and examples? My point is that it may sound counterintuitive. It may not sound like the best advice. That's why I said earlier, some people might see it as controversial. But dating more isn't necessarily better. If you ask me, the best piece of advice I have for somebody dating in their 30s is protect yourself against burnout. The best thing you can do for yourself, for your chances at this point of meeting somebody and it being a success and it going somewhere, is keeping yourself fresh, keeping up some kind of enthusiasm and optimism and hope. And so my advice is date smart, not more. So tune into how each option that comes up, whether that's a person or whether it's a place to go to meet somebody, how does that sit with you? And then focus in on just what feels like it works for you, what feels positive and affirming, and don't give so much attention to what doesn't. Don't, have FOMO. Don't worry that by missing out, you're missing your opportunity. You have a sense. And the reason why I'm making such a big case out of this is to show you that it's not what does it hurt. I actually believe that it's hurting and that you have to take measures to protect yourself from that. So because of the ideas that I was just talking about, protecting yourself against burnout, there have been proponents of like a first encounter between, potential date singles, is the first setup being like a 15-minute phone call, or even better, a Zoom call, just to see if it's worth pursuing further. Or there are proponents of the coffee date, which is instead of somebody having to go pick up somebody else and then going out for a few hours, the two people meet up at a coffee place after work for like a half hour to an hour, just to see if there's something there, and if there is, then they would follow it up with like more real dates. So I'm not against these ideas. I think that they could be good options. I personally don't think that takes the place of honoring your intuition, because I think that these ideas to begin with are kind of built on that stale, tired idea. And I also would only recommend it if you're really skeptical. I think that if you see real potential there, you want to give it a real full date, because a date where the person feels special or valued, that's what gives the potential relationship some momentum in the beginning. That's what I described really in my first date with my husband, that even though the date wasn't amazing, I was really excited for the second one, because it was such a positive experience as a date that it gave it that momentum that it needed to turn into something. And also, the coffee or Zoom date can kind of still contribute to burnout if you're still kind of ignoring your intuition and forcing yourself to give shots to people because, you never know, that whole idea that I just talked about. Anyway, getting back to that date with my husband. So I later found out that he actually was starting to burn out. And one of the reasons why he came up with such a great date was because he went in and decided that whether I was for him or not, he wanted to have a good evening. He wanted to enjoy himself. So he tried to set up, pick places that he would enjoy regardless of how I turned out for him. And I actually think that that's another great idea of how to avoid burnout, because if the person doesn't end up being for you, it helps it from being a negative experience and a more positive experience if you're able to enjoy yourself on some level. So in that case, even though, yes, a date like that is spending more money, and that's a common complaint, especially for men, is how much money they spend on dates that then go nowhere. Sometimes it's just something to consider. It could be worth spending more money for a date if it means that it's less likely to turn out to be a negative experience and it's a positive experience for you, because like we said, anything that avoids that burnout, anything that doesn't take away that spark that you once had, kind of starting out with this. So moving to a little bit of a different topic, but my last tip for singles in their 30s who are dating. So people in their 20s tend to have a friend-centered or social-centered value system. That means that they get to know themselves in relation to others. And it makes sense that if you're single and dating in your 30s still, that you would kind of carry over that mentality you had in your 20s into your 30s. But that's actually not a good fit anymore for somebody who's in their 30s. So you want to be aware of that. That's why as you get into your 30s, climbing up your 30s, you might even find that you're just less interested in social life and a friend circle, because as you get into your 30s, your needs change. It's not so much based on other people anymore. What's more appropriate for you in your 30s is investing in yourself. So filling your days with things that are meaningful or enjoyable to you, or even just habits and activities that nurture you, that are taking good care of yourself, are more valuable. So I found that singles in their 30s who most of their interactions were with married people or families or their own family, ones who went to, kind of community shuls, not just single shuls, or, spent Shabbat meals with other families, or people who created memberships. So whether that's in a synagogue, or whether that's a class you go to regularly that you feel you get a lot out of, that really feeds you, and it further feeds you to be in that environment around those people who also like it, or finding a mentor and belonging to some kind of group with that mentor. So people who are doing that, taking those investments in themselves and less focused on the social circle aspect, those are the people that I kind of, in my observation, tend to see get married sooner. Also, people who spend their weekends, let's say, doing some solo activities, but in social environments. So, riding your bike in a park that has people in it, or going to read a book, working on your laptop or something in a coffee shop. Like, it takes away some of the loneliness because you're out, you're amongst life, but you're still doing your own kind of thing for you to enjoy rather than depending so much on others. I know that may not sound super appealing. I'm going to be honest, there's no avoiding feeling lonely at times or feeling, wistful for a relationship, especially, you're seeing other couples around you, maybe other families, and you're longing for that. I wish I had a good answer for that, but that's just, an unfortunate part of the experience. But after a certain age, too much dependence on friends or social life or social circles becomes unproductive and can actually lead to feelings of emptiness inside because you're trying to use it to fulfill something and it's just not doing it. It can even lead to unnecessary drama because it's just putting people in situations that are just kind of excessive or more than it should be. And that's why kind of these nurturing but kind of solo activities or activities amongst, families or a variety of others could just be a better way of investing yourself and protecting yourself against burnout when you're single in your 30s. So before we end, in episodes 3 through 8 of this series, I talked about spiritual solutions to singleness. I recommend for this age group to check that out because it's more help in turning inward and putting the emphasis on the meaningful, which is a lot of kind of, what we covered today. Because it's really hard to be in your position. There aren't easy answers. There aren't easy solutions. And I feel for you. I've been there. I know what it's like. So lots of people just kind of give up or they settle. And I wish for more than that for you. You should also check out episode 15 about avoiding common dating mistakes, because in that episode I just give kind of my best dating advice regardless of age, for all ages. It can't hurt to watch the episode for 20-somethings because there could still be stuff in there that's valuable for you. And for singles, so I'd say mid-30s and up, I would also recommend the episode for 40-somethings because there's some stuff that could be good for you in that one too. So a lot of information, but all of it geared to make you feel better and see better results. And I really hope to hear that that's what it does for you. So thinking of you, and good luck. If you thought this recording was helpful, please share it on social media so that it gets to more people that it can help. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel and like this video. If you're interested in therapy sessions with me online, please contact me through my website or my email or social